Welcome to Icons of the Dragon Ball Community, the series where I interview very special people who have contributed positively to the world of Dragon Ball, and not just Dragon Ball, but also all different forms of entertainment. It's a huge pleasure of mine to speak to this man. You've heard him in Dragon Ball, you've heard him in One Piece, you've actually, if you play Borderlands, you've heard him there too. Please welcome the voice of Mr. Satan, Chris RAGER. How are you doing, sir?
I'm very well, sir. Thanks for having me on. Glad to be here.
I'm very, very pleased to have you here. You play one of the, I would consider Mr. Satan or Hercule one of the most, I would say popular comic relief characters ever. I feel like with Dragon Ball, when Toriyama first introduced Mr. Satan, it was, you know, he's gone on record of saying it's his favorite character because I feel like a character like that's so much fun to write for, and I presume that you coming in probably had a good time recording for him, but you would know better than me.
I certainly did. You know, when I first auditioned for Dragon Ball, I didn't know what Dragon Ball Z was. I had no clue. I mean, I knew what anime was, but when I was a kid, we called it Japanimation. So I really hadn't I had heard the term anime, but didn't really know. I called it Japanimation still, right?
Yeah.
So when I went into audition, on the docket that day was Mr. Satan or Hercule. And they had a picture of him, they had a little description of him, and then they had some sides that they wanted me to read for the audition. And honestly, I didn't even read the description, other than that he was like the world champ. And he was, in the picture, he was wearing a belt, he had the hair, he had the Fu Manchu thing kicking like, you know, Hogan. And so my first inclination was to do all my favorite 80s wrestlers sort of in this one voice. You know, just a mishmash of 80s wrestlers, and they liked it. I got the part, and I've been doing it ever since. So, yeah, I mean, what I really like about Hercule is that sort of aspect where he's the one that sort of sits in reality. He's the only one that's like, hey, does anyone not notice that there are people flying around shooting laser beams out of their hands? Or is it just me? Because I think we're all going to die, you know?
It's a trick. It's a trick. Right.
Well, that's the thing is he has to almost tell himself that, or even tell the people of Satan City that, or Earth that, and you know, to make it okay. But in reality, he knows that some bad shit's going down.
Right, and it's interesting because we're going to get to more of him in a second, but he ends up starting out as the world's biggest con artist and is actually responsible for saving the world at the end of the day, which I thought was a great writing from Toriyama. So I wanted to ask you, before you got into voice acting, because you have a whole resume, you were in Yu Yu Hakusho, Toriko. What did you want to do, like, when you were younger? Was this what you wanted to do? Did you want to voice cartoons, or did you have other aspirations and then wound up in the business from a different way? Everybody has a different story here.
Right. No, I didn't. As a child, there was only one voice actor that existed when I was a kid, and that was Mel Blanc, you know.
The legend, yeah.
Yeah, and so I thought to myself, well, they just got this one guy. He does all the voices, you know. And so it never really occurred to me that I could also do that. I just thought, well, they only have a handful of people and they do all the voices, and that's just kind of how it registered to me. And so I never really thought about it. It wasn't really until just a little bit after high school and college, that because I wanted to be an artist, I was pretty good at art, and I was paying for my own college classes. As it turns out, I didn't have the $16 for the lab fee for my Drawing 2 class.
Damn.
So that semester, I took an acting class instead, and I just never went back to drawing.
And it was just because of that little fee. That's crazy.
Right, yeah, it was really, you know, so from there, I started doing all the plays. I got into improv, which turned out I had a knack for. I ended up leaving college and going to acting school. I went to this place called Katy Conservatory of the South, or Katy Conservatory, Acting Conservatory of the Southwest. I think now it's just called Katy Studio. As a kid, at that age, what I really wanted to do was be on Saturday Night Live. I had tons of characters in me. accents and all kinds of stuff. And the world of improv really brought that out. And then when I realized that's the world in which they pull from for SNL, whether it's Second City or Groundlings or Upright Citizens Brigade in New York, that's how you got into Saturday Night Live. So that was my mission, was that I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live, or have our own show that was like Saturday Night Live,
like a Mad TV.
Yeah, Mad TV, something like that. Yeah. So that was our mission.
So you wanted to do improv, and now you're doing voice acting. I was gonna ask you. Now it's been a few years. Do you in your own opinion, do you think that you're still do you still have that improvisational, I guess, gift inside of you? Because I know you've been obviously reading scripts for so many years. Or are you now have you moved past that, or do you think you can still knock it out of the park? Do you think that improv is still in you?
I still perform improv from time to time.
Great.
Probably more so at conventions where I run improv panels for the guests of the conventions, things like that. So it keeps me in the know, keeps me spry, as it were, I guess you might say. So yeah, I mean, I still get to practice it, and even in the acting, I tell my students, I teach a voice acting workshop here in Dallas, and I tell my students that after this class you need to go take some improv, because that's really where you start to kind of develop characters. You really begin to think on your feet. You begin to think structurally in your mind about what choices to make, how to make good choices. It's almost life lessons as well. Learning improv teaches you a lot about yourself and how to deal with life, as well as how to build scene work. So I always recommend improv.
Now, you mentioned that you have a school, I guess, or classes for voice acting. I know there's going to be a lot of people who are watching this who are going to want to get in there. What kind of information can we give to them so that they can contact you, or they can sign up for the school? Because I'm guessing you have sessions during the different seasons?
I do them probably about once every other month or so. I bring in people like Joel McDonald, Monica Rial, Chris Sabat, who all help me teach the class. The class is about sort of the experience of being a voice actor, specific to the world of anime and video games, because more specifically in Dallas, those are two industries you could be making money at as a voice actor.
Texas is huge for that.
So if you're out there, maybe you haven't quite gotten your feet wet enough, you've maybe done some anime or not some video games, or you're just sort of, you're still in theater and you're, just trying to break into the world, do some networking and everything else. It sort of encompasses all those benefits, I think, for students that I brought in. I'm about to go into my 5th session. Now the classes are 4 weeks, 3 hours each week, and we hold them Tuesday nights from 7 to 10 p.m. And it's at Okatron 5000 Studios, where we record Dragon Ball Z and Borderlands 2 and things like that. So
right there, you're right. So if somebody goes to your class, they're right in the middle of everything, pretty much.
Yeah, if you come to their classes, you will be recording in the studio in which Dragon Ball Z is recorded.
It's madness. Now let's talk about Dragon Ball. I want to take you back to when you first came to the series. Now, obviously, some people don't know the story, but really quickly, I'll briefly just explain for the people who don't know. In 98, Funimation went in-house with their production, and they started hiring, voice actors when they they found it too expensive to fly to Vancouver. That's what Chris Sabat had said when I interviewed him. So they started hiring in-house people, and the Mr. Satan character, Hercule character, was not around then, but were you part of that initial audition process, or did you audition later on?
Yeah, no, I auditioned later on. So, I came in about a year after they had started the series.
So what was that audition process like? Was it with Barry Watson and those guys, or somebody else?
No, I'm pretty sure it was for Sabat that day. I believe it was Sabat and Justin Cook, who was his engineer, who's now the president of Funimation or something.
He's a big shot.
He is a big shot at Funimation now, but back in the day, he was Sabat's engineer. And so I believe I just auditioned for the two of them. The person who called me on the phone to tell me I got the part was Barry Watson. So yeah, I mean, I guess that he was involved in that aspect. I didn't really ever record with Barry very much. He was interesting.
So you came in to voice Mr. Satan / Hercule. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to ask you, you also voiced King Yema, and for the Japanese version, those two characters were voiced by Daisuke Gori, who's a legendary voice actor. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2010, and he's got that that grovelly kind of voice. He also voiced King Cold. When you came in to do Hercule, Mr. Satan, did you listen to any Daisuke Gori? Did his voice kind of influence you to perform that character? Because I'll be honest with you, I'll be very blunt about this. When the Funimation guys first started, it took a little bit of adjusting for them to get used to their voices. But when you came in to do Hercule, Mr. Satan, I feel like you nailed that character immediately. Like, you knew what he was about. You knew that he was a goofball. Like was Daisuke Gori influential, or was it something that just came from above and just hit you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, these days when we record anime, you hear the scene, you watch and listen to the scene in Japanese beforehand, before you record that scene.
Yeah.
Back then, the technology wasn't quite what it is today, so I did not have, back then, a Japanese reference to go by. And it was purely just my choice as an actor to kind of go that route and have him sort of be this. I mean, that's just what he was. He was Hulk Hogan to me. That's what he was, and so that was the persona I was going to. I imagine that anytime Hercule appeared, it was like him doing cutting a wrestling promo.
Yeah,
because he was always at that moment was he was in front of a crowd, he's in front of the press, so it always had to be this big hype talk. I'm going to talk a big game, and then I'll cry and freak out in the corner later. But it's all, it's Hulk Hogan, challenging Macho Man Savage at the Omni in Atlanta, and just, I'll see you, brother. I'll see you at the Omni Atlanta. Oh, yeah. And just,
no, I love it, man. Look, I'm a huge 80s wrestling fan. I personally am. Who were some of your favorites that you watched back then? Because I'm interested in talking to you about that. Because I think that, yeah, the Hercule character was like, secretly a coward. Now, obviously, wrestlers from the 80s were anything but cowards because it was a different era. But who were some of the guys you watched in the 80s? It seems like you're really familiar with it.
In the 80s, I was. I don't watch so much these days. My friend Josh Martin, who plays Majin Buu, oddly enough, my friend, we ended up best friends in this show, and in real life, I've known Josh Martin for 20 years. Anyway.
Life imitates art.
Right. So, sorry, what was the question? What were we talking about?
No, I was just asking you what wrestlers you liked back then, yeah.
I mean, Hogan was by far my favorite, because it was Hogan. But I enjoyed Macho Man. I really dug George the Animal Steele.
Eating the turnbuckle.
Yeah, he would eat the turnbuckle, man. And, there was a few other. I remember, well, back earlier than before I started watching WWF at the time. Now it's WWE, of course. But I watched local wrestling here in Texas. And you may have heard. Where are you from?
Well, I'm from Florida, so we had Dusty, but that was our big guy. I'm from Tampa, Florida, so he was a god down here. Now I'm guessing if you're in Dallas, you had the Von Erichs.
Von Erichs, yes, the Von Erichs, and so the Sportatorium was the Von Erichs and the Freebirds and those guys, and that was some of my favorite wrestling. The Von Erichs by far, with Kerry Von Erich and the Claw and. The Freebirds being the bad guys. I mean, that was, and then honestly, that was where they had a character come into that wrestling scene called the Dingo Warrior.
Yeah.
Who ultimately became the Ultimate Warrior, and so I liked him because I'd seen him make that transition from local wrestling to big time wrestling. So the Ultimate Warrior was a favorite of mine for a while, and then I did catch back up again. A little bit in the Rock, Stone Cold, Steve Austin hierarchy that lasted a while. I did tune in probably more often than I had in the past and do now at that time as well. So, I like The Undertaker and Triple H and some of those guys too.
It's just crazy because, like, I talk to kids nowadays about what wrestling is now. It's very produced, homogenized. And when we talk about the Von Erichs, like, people don't understand. The people in that sportatorium believed. They believed.
Yeah. Oh, dude, as a kid, as an 11-year-old kid, I mean, you told me wrestling was fake, dude. I'd freak out on you, dude. I'd be like, no, it's not. You don't see what I see.
Because Terry Bam Bam Gordy that would go in there with Michael Hayes and they'd lock the cage and they would kill Kerry Von Erich. And you'd have people crying, man. Like, this is real to them. You couldn't tell them otherwise.
Yeah, old ladies in the crowd, like, freaking out and, like, throwing their canes and stuff like that, man. I mean, real emotion. They evoked real emotion out of these people. It was some great wrestling back then.
Did you ever end up making it to the sportatorium for any shows or anything?
I never did. I never did venture into, because honestly, man, the sportatorium was way out in Fort Worth, and we lived in Dallas, and I was, my parents were educators. My dad was a professor, and he wasn't maybe the wrestling type, as it were. So yeah, that wouldn't have been something that they would have interested. They would have considered it. They just would have considered that a place they thought I should go.
Yeah, well, I mean, back then you had the beer bottles being thrown, so I kind of see where they're coming from. You can't do that anymore.
Sure.
So it sounds like when they casted you as Mr. Satan, that's like perfect casting because you understood. I feel like that's crazy. Like, I'm mind blown that you understood that character so well because you watched wrestling as a kid and because you knew what that character was. Like, before you started performing the role, did you watch any of the footage or research anything, or was just a natural thing? It sounds like it was all natural.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I no research, no nothing. I just went into the booth and I had, what was fun though, what was interesting was it was one thing to be bombastic and talk a big game and, everybody calm and relax. I got this. I'm in control. It was one thing to do that. What I hadn't done in that voice before was freak out and cry and grovel and stuff. So that was that's where the comedy kind of played in. It was sort of taking that voice, this big, hard, bad man voice, and seeing what it sounded like when he wasn't being big and bad and tough.
Was that challenging for you?
No, I wouldn't say it was challenging. It was just it was fun to see what would come out. Because again, that sort of that improv in me, I wasn't going to go through the lines and be like, okay, this is what I'm going to say. I was going to look at the line. I was going to go with the emotion I thought he was trying to convey or what was going on, and let's see what comes out. And so that's what I did.
Now, when you came back to perform him for Dragon Ball Kai, Dragon Ball Z Kai, I wanted to ask you about kind of your experiences there because. With Dragon Ball Z Kai, I know that it was 10 years later. Obviously, everybody at Funimation was way more experienced. Everybody was just, they had been doing these characters for so long. And you came in, you had a much, much more, I guess, less censored script. It was more of like a traditional anime style. What were the differences, that you remember from when you did Kai versus when you did the original Z?
I definitely felt the writing was better. I definitely felt that this time around they were staying more true to the manga as far as, line and context and those kinds of things, as opposed to just trying to fill flaps in many cases they did, that took place in the early days. So yeah, I definitely feel like the writing got better. I definitely felt like, as you were saying, it's sort of like I look back at the Simpsons, the early Simpsons and how they all sounded with their voices, as opposed to what we hear today. I think everybody groomed their voices a little bit in those years, and I think we got a lot better performances. I think you had clear definitions of what those voices sounded like. So yeah, no, I knew that what we were doing the thing that we should have done all along.
That's how I felt too. Now you brought up the manga. I was gonna ask you, do you on your off time, do you read the manga? Are you actually like a fan of anime, or is it just like a job to you?
I'm a fan of anime in, I guess, one sense. I don't really read mangas and whatnot, but I do try to get my daughter into it in some capacity and those kinds of things. But I mean, growing up, I mean, I look back at the anime that I enjoyed growing up. Of course, like I said, we called it Japanimation, but
Yep.
of course, the early days I loved Speed Racer. My big two were Battle of the Planets and Star Blazers, or Star Battleship Yamato. And then of course there was, after that, there was Robotech and Voltron,
And then Sailor Moon and Pokemon and Dragon Ball. That was the 90s
well,
boom.
see, when Pokemon came out, I was already in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't, I kind of let some of those things, it wasn't something I look back on like, oh, I'm going to watch that, that.
Yeah.
At that time of my life, I'm like, oh, well, that's a show for kids. I'm not going to like that. So.
No, it's interesting too, because you mentioned the previous, like the 80s, I suppose, and back then you had companies like Harmony Gold and Saban who were, even though we knew it was Japanese, they masked it to a degree. They changed Macross to Robotech. They changed like the Grimm's Fairy Tales came over by Saban, heavily edited. It was almost as if the companies were trying to, I guess, hide the Japanese part of it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think what they felt was like, well, we know what American kids like in their cartoons, and so we're going to edit these in a way that we think, because it follows the more traditional animation that we've known. So I think over the years that the fact that now that the craft is to stay as true as possible to the Japanese, as opposed to let's make it appeal to what we think American audiences want.
Yeah,
it's been nice to see that transition over the years, because I've met some of those voice actors from those days, those shows from the late '70s and early '80s and stuff, and it's a definitely different story back then.
Yeah, and I'm actually happy that the industry shifted into that, because one of the big criticisms of the original Z dub, the first one, not the Kai one, was that it was censored. There was music changes, and it's very interesting when you think about it, Chris, because I was a teenager in the late '90s. I was a teenager, and I remember just I didn't like the censorship, and I know why they did it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But and then you come back with Kai, and Kai is a better dub, but then you've got this new generation of fans who grew up with Z, so they're nostalgic to that dub, and so I've had some struggles explaining to them, okay, it's cool that you like that dub, you saw it when you were a kid, but the Kai dub is so much more better produced, I think. Just
it's way better, man. There's not a voice actor who worked on that show who worked on the original one, because there were a few changes, not many.
Yeah.
Bulma and Chi-Chi.
Gohan.
Who was Gohan before?
Stephanie Nadolny was the original Gohan, and she was replaced by Colleen Klinkenbeard.
Oh, young Gohan, yes.
Yeah, Kid
young
Gohan. Yeah.
Kid Gohan, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So Stephanie Nadolny, and then who was the other one? Starts with T.
Tiffany Vollmer.
Tiffany Vollmer. Yeah, they did not bring the two of them back.
Yeah, and they replaced Linda Young with Chris Ayres, who, all due respect to Linda Young, I think she's fantastic, but Chris Ayres really captured that character, I thought.
He nailed it, man. He nailed it. And yeah, so, but the thing was, it was like, hey, we have a better supply of more well-rounded voice actors in our tool belt, so let's use them. Plus, Plus, I think some of those decisions came down to probably who Sabat really wanted to work with on this. Who he knew could pull it off.
Yeah, I think
he's pretty. Down to it.
I think he's pretty good at casting, to be honest with you.
Well, it's like he always likes to joke. Back in the day, they only had 12 voice actors. So when you ask him why he got so many parts, he's like, "Well, I got every 12th part." I was like, "Man, you got more than every 12th part."
It certainly felt that way. Right now, I wanted to ask you about Mr. Satan. When you came into audition, was his name already Hercule, or was that a creative? Because I know pretty much they changed his name because, and I'm saying this not for you because you know, but for the fans listening who don't know. The word Satan, anything religious was, back then with standards and practices was very difficult to get through the television for Cartoon Network. So you had, like Kami was actually just God, and you had gods. And of course, when you guys went back to do Battle of Gods, you really couldn't call it Battle of Kami. So it was like, whatever, let's just keep it with gods.
Right.
But they changed.
Well, even the whole, references to hell, they had to change to HFIL. Home for Infinite Losers.
Right.
Which I honestly thought was really clever. I was like, hey, man, if that's what you had to do, that's awfully clever.
And they actually went in there and they erased the HELL and they took little parts.
I was one of those guys, too. I think I was the blue one. And I think Sabat was the other one.
Gaz and Mez, you mean?
Yeah, I'm Gaz. That's it, Gaz.
I remember that. That's some of the best filler. That's the one thing that is like Kai is supposed to be more true to the manga, but some of those filler episodes I thought were hilarious.
Yeah, there were probably some filler episodes that people who had watched the previous stuff were going to miss. And honestly, and to be quite honest, because we recorded. I'm not even sure if I can say this, but whatever. We recorded Buu Saga a while ago.
You're not the first one to have said that already.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And so it's been my curiosity as to what the hell they're ever going to do with that. And it's not us. It's not Funimation. It's the Japanese.
Yes, it's Toei. I've been telling people that.
So I'm just like, well, okay, well, now that Super is coming out and, the writing and dubbing on that is headed towards us. It's kind of like, well, what are they going to do with that? Because they just paid us to record that, to do nothing with it? I don't understand.
I mean, they've got to put it out first because the Buu arc goes right into Super,
The only thing that makes sense to me, exactly that, because Buu goes into Super, exactly, because Super just fills in the gaps in between Battle of the Gods and Resurrection F.
Well, it retells them and adds more. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. So exactly, it comes in at the end of the Buu Saga and then fills in the gaps of the last two movies.
Yeah, they've got. I'm imagining they're going to put the Buu arc out first and then Super because I think it would be kind of strange if they did it the other way around.
I mean, I tell you what, that's the only thing that makes sense. They're holding on to it to release one into the other. It's the only thing that makes sense.
But Super's still running, but I'm over here thinking, okay, well, One Piece is still running. You guys are still doing One Piece. Like every that show might not end for 4, 5, 6 years. Who knows?
Dude, that show is never going to end. One Piece will end the day that guy dies.
Yeah, Oda.
I'm sure. Yeah, I read somewhere that there was a terminally ill patient in Japan who's, I guess, sort of like a Make-A-Wish Foundation. His Make-A-Wish was for the creator of One Piece to tell him how it ends.
That's crazy. I have not heard that before.
And you know what? And when I've mentioned that story, people confirmed to me that no, that did happen.
So that kid knows the ending. So it's kind of like the whole Game of Thrones George R.R. Martin thing.
Right, but now that kid's passed away. So this kid, went on, passed along, knowing at least how his favorite anime ended.
That's crazy. I mean, that's good for him, but that's nuts when you ever hear a story like that.
Right.
You know, it's like, well, we'll talk about it real quick about Star Wars because it's interesting what's going on with that. But I wanted to ask you about the Hercule change. In the French dub, they called him Mr. Savage. If you were in charge, like, do you think Hercule was a good name for that character? Do you think they should have went with Mr. Savage? Should they have called him Satan? Like, what else could they have done here? I've been racking my brain thinking about this.
Well, obviously, I mean, I completely understood why they changed his name. And they sort of, you know, here at the Funimation, they just decided, well, that'll just be his first name. His name will be Hercule Satan.
Yeah, and then Toriyama did an interview where he's like, no, his first name is Mark. Great.
Right. But
Great.
if you know how the name Mark in Japanese is pronounced, Marku.
Yeah, Maku, which is a pun on Akuma.
Right, Akuma, which means demon.
Yeah.
Demon Satan and his daughter Devil.
Right.
And I don't know if you've noticed in the last movie, Videl was wearing a red dress with a devil on the front of it.
Of course.
So I really sort of enjoy his little playing on it. Because, you know, we were talking about Mr. Satan and sort of his role in sort of this sitting in reality. But and people make fun of me all the time. They try to make fun of me, although I got some Mr. Satan knowledge. I dropped some Mr. Satan knowledge on him. But they try to tease me like, oh, yeah, you take credit for defeating Cell. I'm like, well, actually, without me, Cell kills us all.
Who threw the head? Yes, that was Peyton
And then
Manning.
I have to remind them, I do remember that there was one young Goku who was having some problems with a spirit bomb.
Yes.
He was trying to defeat Buu, and if you remember, there was a certain gentleman who called upon the citizens of Earth to send their energy to the spirit bomb. Not unlike when Peter Pan asked the audience to clap to save Tinkerbell. And then I also had to remind them that if they had seen Battle of the Gods, that there, and you know, spoiler alert, guys, if you're listening to this, that there was needed a fifth Saiyan to complete the circle, and that fifth Saiyan is my granddaughter.
Yes. Yep.
Without me, there is no Videl, there is no Pan. You do not defeat. So again, sort of an ipso facto, I saved the world again.
Yes, no, and it's interesting because that's what I love about that character, that at the end of the day when Goku was gathering that energy, Vegeta was too mean and, you know, it didn't work out, but it wasn't until Mr. Satan stepped in that everybody was like, okay, he saved the world, and it's crazy. Have you seen, or have you at least heard of, the Dragon Ball Super episode 15, which is the infamous episode where Satan fights Lord Beerus? I don't know if you've heard of this. It's the episode where he takes credit for Beerus, for defeating Beerus as well. I don't know if you've seen the images on the internet of him having the golden hair.
Where he believes he goes Saiyan.
Yes. In space.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't wait.
What
to
I've
hear
heard,
your
I
take
have
on
not
it.
seen that. I have not seen that episode. But what I've heard is that he is sort of having a fantasy moment.
Yes.
And because people were questioning me on Twitter and other places, like when that first came up, was that how can he go without having Saiyan blood? How can he go Super Saiyan? And
that's right.
All of the speculation as to why Hercule was going Super Saiyan.
That whole week was crazy. My thing is, I can't wait to see how you nail that one, because that's one of the most talked about episodes in the whole series, and it was just a little filler, little fun little episode, but it's still to this day people bring up that episode about how just absurdly wacky it is.
Well, I mean, honestly, I'm super excited at the chance to record that moment or those moments and to again sort of see what comes out, because I don't really know what's going to come out. I don't know what we're going to come up with, as it were, but it should be a lot of fun, and I'm excited to give it a lot of crazy Mr. Satan energy.
It's going to be awesome. How did you end up in doing Borderlands? Because that was a crazy addictive game when it came out, and there's still more Borderlands games coming out. Mr. Tor, how'd you end up getting that role?
Again, I auditioned on the fun. This is funny. Pro wrestlers have been good to me. Because when I went into audition that day, it was at Okatron. And they again had some audition sides out there of characters that were on the docket that day. And the only one I auditioned for was Mr. Torgue, because I didn't think I was going to get any of the other ones. But when I saw him, I turned to my friend Chad, and I said, I said to him before I auditioned, I was like, I'm going to be this guy. He's like, yeah, how do you know? I go, I've been playing this guy for 17 years.
Right.
And so, well, the funny thing is on the, like when I auditioned for Hercule, they had a picture of Hercule and then some, description in the sides. The audition picture for Mr. Torgue was a picture of Randy Macho Man Savage.
Perfect.
And so,
wow.
And so I thought, okay, that's what I'll do, but I'll just do him incredibly intense, like 1,000 times more intense than Randy Macho Man Savage ever was.
And that's pretty intense because that guy was out of his mind.
Yeah, because Elizabeth, and it was all, but it was like this controlled intensity. I thought to myself, what if Macho Man couldn't control it? That when it wasn't all, all intense and focused, and it was just crazy all over the place. That I thought, well, let's see what that sounds like. And again, I got the part. They had me come in and record. Because initially, Torgue was just going to be a vending machine. That you not unlike the medical and the ammunition one that you came up to.
Yes.
They would quip off lines to you. That's all mine was going to be. Ultimately, that did make it into the game, the vending machine, but they decided that because it was such a funny character and everyone was laughing so much that they were going to give him his own DLC. And so I got called back in. They're like, oh, well, we really like this character. We gave him his own DLC.
That's great.
And so here you go. I was like, fuck yeah.
And you were a big part of it.
Yeah, well, and then after that, I literally was in every DLC after that. I realized Anthony really really liked this character and just wanted me to come back. Wherever he could interject Torgue and get something funny out of him, he found a way. And so I think how much fun I had recording Torgue and the voice and the character, what I gave to him. But really, that character deserves every bit of credit should go to Anthony Birch for writing that character, because the lines were just so much fun to say, and they just they came out like they were improvised. I mean, I really was saying a lot of those lines for the first time, and probably the only time I ever said those lines, because the voice was so intense. They didn't often ask me to record it again.
How did you deal with your throat? Are there any tricks that you can kind of give up and coming voice actors? Or do they have to go to the school to find out on how to not throw your voice? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, no, my school doesn't necessarily focus so much on technical aspects such as that, but for myself, and this is not advisable, I don't recommend this. The longest I would have been in for a session would have been 2 hours. And honestly, I would probably only really record for an hour of that session. But I would sometimes it just depended. Some days I would just hack through it, And they'd be like, no, do you want to stop? I'm like, no, let's go. I want to finish it.
Right. You want to get it done.
If I stop, I won't be able to do it again.
Yeah, not for a day, right? I assume.
Yeah, no. It took about a day and a half before my voice was normal again.
Yeah, that's the. I
guess
that's
just an hour of screaming. So, but
that's crazy.
Not an hour straight of screaming, of course, but.
No, I mean, it's just, I just imagine the strain. But you know what's interesting? You brought up something that just popped in my head. You were talking about Randy Savage. You know what's crazy? When you really think about it, talking about Hulk Hogan in the 80s real quick, did you ever notice that even though he was the good guy of the company, a lot of times he kind of did come off kind of like a dick? And what I mean by that is this. When Paul Orndorff turned on him, right? It's because he wouldn't return his calls. That's kind of a dick move. And then, when Randy Savage was pissed at him because he kept, touching Elizabeth's ass. Do you remember any of these storylines?
I don't remember the Paul Orndorff stuff. I do remember like Hogan like flirting with Elizabeth. I do remember like Hogan trying to steal Elizabeth away from him. I do remember that story arc.
Yeah, so it's almost like you can relate with Randy. He's supposed to be a bad guy, but you kind of relate with him. Like, what is this guy doing? You know, eyeing my wife, you know, or whatever.
Well, and that was the thing is, and I understood probably by then, by the 80s, I understood the dynamic of, the hero and the heel in wrestling. I kind of figured that out. And so I guess when Hercule came along, I thought to myself, he's the perfect heel. So there was this sort of moment of like, I realizing that, although he was a good guy, he's going to come off as an ass.
Yeah. Yep.
But ultimately he's just really trying to save face. So it didn't take me long to realize that. Although, and I do believe Akira Toriyama has denied this, that he is pulled from 80s wrestlers or wrestling in general, when he thought of and creating Hercule.
He said he was never a fan, but I agree with you. I'm very skeptical about that. Yeah.
Right. He said he was never a fan. I'm like, well, dude, you're lying. Because you created, really the perfect wrestling heel in a story arc. And so I played that. That was just, I'd watched it for years, and I had done that voice with my friends for years. My friends and I had screwed around and pretended we were Hogan and Savage and who could do the best impersonation and those kinds of things, So
and then you got paid for it.
Yeah, all of a sudden it was like, hell, man, this is easy.
Now, what are some of the differences when it comes to doing anime versus video games? When you're in the studio, things like that. Because from what I understand, I definitely need you to correct me on this one. A lot of the fans were Dragon Ball fans, for example. We're talking about how in some of the games, the voice flaps don't match. And I'm always saying, well, no, wait a minute.
I'm with you, dude. No, that pisses me off.
They don't have no idea what they're talking about, because if I'm right on this one, don't you guys just get the lines?
I'm with them. On the video games especially.
Mm-hmm, okay.
Well, here's the thing, is when we record the video games for Dragon Ball Z, they don't give us those cutscenes so that we can time code them and match the flaps.
That's what I'm saying. You just read them, right?
What they give us is the previous Japanese actors' recording of those lines that are in their version of the game, and you have to match a certain amount of time.
Oh.
But you say your line.
Oh.
And then they just throw it in there. It's clunky as hell. It really pisses me off, honestly. I really like, dude, just give us the cutscenes so this doesn't look like shit.
No, because the thing is that I always stick up for voice actors because of that, because it's not your fault. Like, they think that you guys are off. No, it's that they're not giving you what you need to properly do it.
No, dude. And believe me, that last Xenoverse game, I was literally like, what the hell, dude? This looks like crap, and you guys know it. But you don't even care, because these kids will buy it up because it's Dragon Ball Z. So for me, it was a matter of, hey, man, give a shit. But maybe they might have a reason that I'm unaware of. So, me ranting and raving probably is for no reason at all. They may have some very good reason as to why they don't give us those cutscenes. I don't know. But it seems ridiculous to me.
It seems rushed, but yeah.
But as far as like recording video games that aren't anime like that, where I'm not having to match what somebody else previously did, like Borderlands, or I was Lothar Rendane in Gearbox's latest title, Battleborn, the main villain in that one. When you're playing characters like that, they animate it to you. So you definitely got a lot more freedom as an actor, as a performer, to play with it a little bit more, as opposed to being restricted to having to fit it into this time or this flap. So there's a lot more freedom in recording a video game than anime.
Yeah. Now, like in the future, and again, the future's unwritten, but what are kind of your goals going forward? I know that you've got a lot of gigs going on. Are you looking to do something like more like American animation? Do you just are you still doing like your like radio gigs? Like what is your, I'm just curious, do you have any like upcoming goals or anything you want to accomplish in your career that you haven't yet?
Well, I started. I've recently been asked to be another director up at Funimation. Of course, there's a big conglomeration now with Crunchyroll and Funimation, and there's a lot of anime that needs to be recorded. So they're bringing in a few people, not unlike myself, to do things like that. So I'm going to do some directing up at Funimation, which I'm looking forward to. I've got my classes and workshops that I'm continuing to do. I am going to begin to branch out more and see what other work out there outside of the sort of the Texas market that I've been very comfortable in. So I think maybe it's time I did some branching out, but I don't know if I'm going to go move off to LA or anything. But I am going to see if I can't maybe get my foot in the door in some of those places out there and see what that's like, because I would really love to play an original character in an original animation. I think that would, I mean, one, that's where the money is, that if you're an actor, a voice actor, and you do characters and those types of things, and that's what I do. I can kind of consider myself the character actor of anime. I don't get those lead roles very often. I come in when they got some weird guy who says funny things,
Well, but it's funny because people like J.K. Simmons were character actors, not for voices, but still they were character actors for years. And now this guy's getting awards. And, I think everybody has that path where, I think one day maybe you will do it. I mean, I can't predict the future, but who's to say? You know what I mean?
Well, I definitely think that I'm more than capable of booking some of the things that are out there in the world of video games and animation that is being cast and dealt in LA and New York and places like that. So it's just a matter of sort of shattering that glass ceiling and getting your foot in the door and just doing it. But I have probably for many years been very comfortable here where I'm at, but I'm not so comfortable anymore. I'm a little antsy. I want to see what's out there.
Right. Before we close out, gotta talk about Star Wars real quick. We must talk about it. What did you think about Force Awakens and the I guess the renaissance? Because 2015 was crazy. We saw the return of Dragon Ball with Dragon Ball Super. We saw the return of Star Wars with Force Awakens. To a lesser degree, we saw Terminator come back. Not really to mixed results there. So many things are coming back. What'd you think about Force Awakens, and how do you think about the direction that Disney's taking with this franchise going forward?
Yeah, I was a fan of it. I enjoyed it. I did enjoy the retelling part of the aspect of it. I got what they were doing, and what I enjoyed was being left with the questions that we were all left with. So I think that's what's often best about a movie is what you think or want to happen based on the giant questions that are out there. Who is Rey? Who is she related to?
Snoke.
What Snoke? What is Ben's story? How did he get to where he's getting, and why hasn't he quite gotten it yet? Because obviously he's sporadic and a bit of a loose cannon, isn't quite as focused as Vader was, and so that all is kind of very interesting to me, and I'm very. Yes, I want to know who Snoke is. I want to know. I feel like I do kind of know who Rey is, although it's not necessarily the way I would like it to go.
Can you share who you think it is?
Yeah, no, I mean, really, I guess my hopes and fantasies were that Rey is the reincarnation of Anakin Skywalker.
Really? You believe that theory? Or that's what you believe?
No, it is a theory. It's not. It's a theory I would like for it to be.
Yeah.
I do not think that is what is going to happen. But I really would, in my head, I'm like, man, that's a really cool storyline. I'd like that.
It's almost because they do you watch any of the Star Wars television shows like Rebels and all that? Do you ever watch those?
Yeah, somewhat. I'm not as religious as maybe some people are, but I've watched them and I catch up on some of the storylines. The thing I saw the other day for the Old Republic.
That trailer you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Dude, when that's like December or something that comes out.
But isn't that fan made though? Correct.
No, dude, that was real.
Really? I was fooled then because I thought it was fan made the entire time. I'm gonna have to look into that when we get done here because
at the end of it had a release thing, December 2nd or something.
Yeah, and there's a new movie coming out December anyways, the Rogue One. Are you gonna go see that? Are you looking forward to that one?
Oh well, sure, of course.
Yeah,
anything that's got Vader in it, man. I got Darth Vader tattooed on my arm here.
Oh man, yeah, well that's real fandom then, bro.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I love Vader as well. I was gonna ask you, because in Rebels, they that might be an opportunity later on for you to do voice acting because Disney, Disney, man, they're gonna crank these shows out like, they're gonna crank.
Oh
these
yeah,
things
dude.
out.
No, I mean and that as a voice actor, yes, all you want then is to be in a Star Wars animation of some kind.
You should go for it, man. That would be great.
Or as a voice actor, you think, man, I hope one day I get to work on something with Mark Hamill or something like that, But
yeah, that would be great. No, but in the Clone War, they had in the last few episodes of it, they were talking this thing about the cosmic force, and I'm not gonna get into spoilers, but basically they kind of are giving us clues that about the reincarnation theory, that it is possible. Based on that the cosmic force may have created another chosen one. Now, it's not really stated like that, but they keep talking about the cosmic force and going to the nether realm and all this lore, this great lore. So I am wondering myself if that's what they're going to do with it.
Well, see, interesting though. I mean, it would explain a lot of thoughts you may have about why she was so quickly receptive to the force. That not only was she receptive to it, but utilized it very well and very quickly. You know? I mean, without anyone training her, with no training at all, she got into that stormtrooper's head just after basically witnessing Ben trying to do it to her.
Yeah, and she reversed it on Ben, too. She reversed it on him.
Right, exactly.
She's like, Gohan.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So, even Luke needed training for that kind of shit, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it would stand to reason that if she is the reincarnation of, say, Anakin Skywalker, that she would already know how to do those things. It would just be an awakening of those things.
What do you think about Rian Johnson directing episode 8?
Again, the Force awakens.
That was the whole thing, right? That it's awakening in her, but it's also a metaphor for Star Wars is back, right?
Right.
Yeah, they did that. I don't know. Well, Chris, it's been a pleasure. Can you let the people know how they can go to your school if you're looking to do that? I mean, if you're looking to promote the school or anything like that.
I definitely am. If you live in the Dallas area or Texas area, you can follow me on Twitter at RAGER Coaster, RAGERCOASTER, like roller coaster, but RAGER Coaster. Check out my fan page on Facebook, Chris Rager Voice Actor, and I make posts there all the time when I do have classes coming up. So, I'm about to start a round of classes here on the 18th, and I should have another round of classes probably coming up maybe middle of December.
Great. Yeah. And you said it was every Tuesday, 3 hours a night, correct?
Yeah, every Tuesday, 7 to 10 p.m. And we record at Okatron 5000 where we've recorded Dragon Ball Z, Borderlands 2.
Is One Piece there?
No, the One Piece is at Funimation still.
Ah, okay.
But yeah, basically Sabbath directs Dragon Ball, and that's at his he owns Okatron, so
Yeah.
They do it at Okatron.
Yes, everybody who's an aspiring voice actor, that's the place to go because you get to work with legends, like people you grew up with, and that's an exciting experience, because I think I've always said this, no matter how much talent you are, even Peyton Manning needs a coach, you know what I mean? It's good to have somebody there who's been around longer, who knows.
Well, and like I said, it's a class about experience. Everybody gets time in the booth every single class. You're getting critiques and notes and directions from people like Joel McDonald, director and voice actor at Funimation, myself, Monica Rial, who's the most amazing female voice actress of a generation, really.
Her resume is endless.
Yeah, and then Chris Sabat, So, if you're interested in, or you've got some experience and you're interested in taking that experience into a more realistic point of view, that you can or cannot do this and see what you got type of situation, then by all means follow me on Twitter at Rager Coaster and Chris Rager Voice Actor Facebook fan page.
Yes, and I'm very humbled to speak to you. Thank you so much, and I really am happy that you're giving back essentially by doing these classes. You're giving your knowledge. It's like Star Wars, like. When Yoda tells Luke, you are the last of the Jedi, pass on what you have learned. That's kind of what you're doing.
Well, really, it's really all, very for selfish reasons, because I get these young people coming to my class and they give me energy. They give me, new ideas. They keep me going. So in a way, I'm sort of sucking their youth out of them as they come to take my classes.
It's a symbiotic thing, right?
Right. Like, keep me feeling young all the while, passing along the knowledge and experience that we've experienced over the years.
Well, everybody check out Chris on Twitter. I'll leave all the links in the description. Thank you again, Chris. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to y'all down the road.